111, what's your emergency? Someone is in my house, and I think it's me. Emergency dispatchers are trained to handle chaos, but this call presented a completely impossible contradiction. The victim was identifying the intruder as herself. The caller was Emily Carter, a 28-year-old graphic designer living alone in a quiet Ohio suburb. A background check revealed no criminal record, no drug use, and no history of mental illness. By all accounts, she was a remarkably average person with no reason to fabricate an emergency. Psychologically, we rely on our homes to act as impenetrable safe spaces. But Emily's baseline of security started fracturing with minor, localized environmental anomalies. Lights she distinctly remembered turning off would be switched on. Doors she left securely closed were slightly ajar. Everyday objects migrated across the room while she was out. The ambiguity of these events ended when the threat escalated. One night, Emily clearly heard the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps. They weren't coming from outside the house, or even downstairs. The sound was isolated entirely inside her own bedroom. It's human nature to look for logical explanations. Emily tried to rationalize the shifting objects and noises as byproducts of extreme stress or work fatigue, but the distinct physical sound of someone walking just feet from her bed made those excuses impossible to maintain. With her subjective rationalizations collapsing, Emily faced an urgent need to verify her own sanity. She had to capture objective, indisputable proof of exactly what was happening in her house while she slept. She installed a security camera in her bedroom to verify if what she was experiencing had a physical source. The goal was simple: separate her subjective anxiety from objective reality. When she checked the footage the next morning, she isolated a specific event at 3:12 a.m. The camera recorded Emily asleep in her bed, while an identical version of her stood perfectly motionless in the dark corner of the room. The camera stripped away any comforting doubt. It recorded Emily's physical body entirely unconscious, yet showed a second iteration of her actively watching the bed. Medical professionals evaluating cases like this usually present a rational framework, the sleepwalker hypothesis. They would suggest Emily was experiencing a severe, undocumented parasomnia episode, acting out complex behaviors while entirely asleep. But a closer look at the biomechanics of the footage challenges the sleepwalker theory. A somnambulist naturally shifts their weight and exhibits micromovements to maintain balance. The figure on camera maintained a rigid stillness, standing in one specific corner for hours without moving. Because medical science doesn't account for this specific behavior, the camera footage stopped being a source of clarity. It was now a record of an event that, according to her own doctor's definitions, should not have been happening. This brings us to the timeline of the final night. Emily physically retreated into her bedroom closet and locked the door, paralyzed by the perception that her doppelganger was standing just outside it. This timeline tracks two simultaneous events. Top, Emily's subjective experience escalating to the 911 call. Bottom, the camera's objective record. At the exact moment the call connects, the top track shows absolute panic, while the bottom track records her asleep. At the precise second dispatch received Emily's whispered plea for help, the video data and her sensory experience were in direct contradiction. The timeline suggests two separate versions of Emily were active in the house at once. Police arrived at the residence exactly 6 minutes after the call connected. They executed a search of the entire property. Their search yielded no physical evidence of an intruder. No signs of forced entry, no secondary DNA profiles, and no trace of anyone else. The responding officers eventually located Emily right where the dispatch call originated. She was locked inside the bedroom closet, clutching her phone in a state of shock. But the security footage spanning that exact 6-minute dispatch window reveals a discrepancy. According to the camera's record, the person in the bed never actually left it. The recording captured one final detail. While Emily slept, the camera caught a faint silhouette standing perfectly still, directly outside the slatted closet door. If the camera proves Emily stayed in bed the entire time, the identity as the 911 caller is left entirely unaccounted for. It's an investigative loop that remains open. Two versions of the same person captured